Over the course of World War II, 8,706,399 soldiers enlisted in the U.S. military. My great-uncle Aby was among them. World War II began in 1939 after a series of appeasement efforts failed to subdue Adolf Hitler's quest of expansion. On September 1st, Hitler invaded Poland and the war began. My great-uncle Abraham Schenk enlisted in the military during the peacetime prior to the war.
Yeah, he was graduating from high school, and Daddy wanted to become a rabbi, and there was no way he wanted to do that, so he went and enlisted without telling anybody. And Daddy found out, this was, he's like, no, but that's what Dad told me. And he said he was so mad at him that the only time he ever remembers him, he didn't get hard enough to throw him across the room, because he did it behind their back, and he was just 18 years old.
After he had been deployed in Hawaii for some time, he returned and met the woman who he ended up marrying, my great-aunt Shirley.
I know that he met my mom during the war. He was home on leave, and then they were writing letters up and back. And he was always a really good writer.
During the war, Aby was on board one of the hundreds of ships that were lost during the course of World War II.
He was torpedoed on a boat I had a lot of terrible times there. They sunk his boat. I don't know exactly where he was. Then he had like nothing. All his clothes, everything was gone. He used to write letters to my mother and send them socks because he really had nothing left. It's really cold here. Send me warm socks. And because he didn't want Bubby to know.
One of his greatest achievements during the war occurred when his company accidentally found one of the Nazi concentration camps. This was just one of the 900 subcamps that made up the 23 main camps that had already been established.
He liberated one of the camps, and because he spoke Yiddish, he was the interpreter, and he took down a story from one of the people who were in the camp about everything that happened to him. There was one of the work camps that they found by accident. They didn't know it was there, and they just walked in on it. The first, the guys were giving out food to the people, and they were getting sick, and then they realized they shouldn't be doing that, and they just had Dad be the interpreter to get as many stories as they could get, because there weren't many people in the unit that could, he was the one who spoke Yiddish, so he could communicate with everybody.
All of his experiences during the war shaped him as an individual. During the war, he was one of the guys, and was very protective of his fellow soldiers. He brought some of this home with him, as well as a harder exterior.
And he was a tough guy from all of this. He got to be a sergeant, and he kept that name just for his whole life. And it made him be very, very strong when he needed to be, and appeared to some people that he was too tough. But that's how he got past everything that was bothering him. He'd just be able to turn it all off and become sergeant again.
I don't think he was outgoing as I was. I'm more a bullshit artist. Talk a lot. He was more serious. I was more. He was always very serious. Always very serious. Everything had to be this way, not this way. Straight. But he had a heart of gold.
Once he left for the war, Aby still kept in touch with his family.
He would write to my parents, and then when he met Shirley, he wrote to her. It was right away. I think that was his girlfriend, or yes, me. I don't remember any others, but then I wouldn't have paid any attention to it too. I wasn't into girls. It was all boys. And then when the war came, I had maybe eight boyfriends, Then all of a sudden I'm left with just one. He had a heart condition. He wasn't drafted, not just the two of us. We were through the war. We were buddies.
Before the war began, Fred's mother kept in touch with her family back in Poland.
My parents, my father had nobody over there. He was an orphan when he came to America already. But my mother had two sisters living and a mother and father living there, and they used to write to each other. And then suddenly that stopped, and they always worried what happened, what happened. My brother specifically, when he was in Europe, went to the area where they lived, and there was no record of anything, no sign of it.
Fred Schenk remembers a story from when the invasion of Poland was announced on the radio.
Don't forget that we didn't have television those days, so all you got was the newspaper and the radio, what was going on. But really, you really didn't know what was going on. I remember there was a dentist that lived across the street from me, and I was having him working on my teeth, and this is before the war. And he put at that time, you never filled the tooth. First you had to fill it, a temporary filling, and you stuff it with cotton and seal it, let the medicine heal the nerve. And what happened was, all of a sudden he heard his son was studying in Poland, and when Poland was attacked, he listened on the radio when they heard Poland was attacked. He had a heart attack, so that was the end of that. I didn't have to go to the dentist anymore. He wasn't there. I eventually lost a tooth because I didn't take care of it.
Just like my Zadie and his friend, not everyone was drafted as soldiers, especially at the beginning of the war. Many people who would not normally have been drafted due to various health issues were enlisted under limited service. Under the military classification, this was called 1B.
I was, when they called me up, I see out of one eye. Now, they took a lot of people with one eye, even, they limited service, and these guys, they took them. And whether they used them, I believe one of his friends, and my brother's friend, was taken in, and he had one eye, and he was fighting. And then after that, they would use them for, like, secretaries, things like that, limited service. What they called that was limited service. When they got around to me, don't forget, the war started in what is it? Was it 41, 42? The end of 41 or something like that, the war started. But they'd taken people up beforehand. They were kept in the army. But I was, when I hit 18, when you had to register at 18, so we're talking about 35, 43 already. It was in 1943, and the war has gone on a year already. So they were full. Every year I was called up for an examination, and because of my eyesight, they classified me 1AL, 1A limited service. But they weren't taking any limited service. They had enough limited guys that couldn't fight. Right, I wanted to go, but my mother was happy, but I wanted to go. But every year, that's 43, 44, and 45. They called me again in 45, right? Now, the war's over. The war is over, and they're calling me for an examination. Everybody's coming home, and now they're calling me. I said, oh my God, now they're going to take me when everybody's coming home? But at this time, really, they didn't need any 1ALs, and they classified me 4F, and it was finished, that's it. But all during the war, it was 1AL, 1A limited service, because of the eye. And especially you want to shoot, this is the eye, right? I'd have to learn to shoot with this one.
While Fred Schenk was mostly unaffected by the war, his His brother's life was changed forever. Along with his lifelong nickname and some close friends, Aby learned to be tougher and more resilient. When he was extremely sick and near death, he said, "My legs carried me through Europe, and now they'll keep me alive." He never really got better, however, and after being sick for many, many years, he passed away. Despite the pain and hardships of his illness, he remained stoic until the very end, remaining forever the Sarge.